I'm a simple man. I live alone, no kids, dogs, or close friends. I tend to keep to myself, although despite my best efforts, many people in this town know me. That's to no credit of my own. My wife, Emily, was the social butterfly. Emily was the kind of woman who could win anyone over with a smile and never stood by in the event of any injustice. She was always out of my league by miles, simply due to her heart, yet for some reason, she chose me. "You keep me safe," she would say, and that I did. You see, Emily's heart was also her fatal flaw, in more ways than one. Some people like to take advantage of it and would appeal to her with fake charities, unreciprocated assistance in moving, and even a few attempts to take her on dates disguised as hangouts, which none of the other invited parties would show. You know how that goes. I was Emily's advisor. I warned her not to reply to that Nigerian prince, told her that yes, Dave from work was trying to hit on her. You know the drill. She needed me to toughen her up, and as a former Marine, I was plenty capable. But I also needed her to bring out my soft side. She forced me out to social events, introducing me to nearly everyone in town. Emily knew everyone, and everyone knew her. I think that's what made her death so devastating. The whole town felt a loss, not just me. I like to say that her heart was just too big for her body to keep up. She went into cardiac arrest one day, inexplicably. Despite my hermit-like nature and a severe lack of invitations, Emily's funeral was the most well-attended I have ever seen. Streets were packed, parking lots were full, all just to pay respects to someone everyone felt they knew on a personal level. After the funeral came the visitors and the casseroles, and I tolerated it. I knew Emily wouldn't want me to cast aside these people, as they were grieving too. After a few weeks, it slowed down, and I adjusted to a life of self-imposed solace. I do best alone, with the exception of Emily, so I didn't mind the quiet. However, after a while, it became rather lonely. But I'm not the type to ask for help, so I found a solution that got rid of the horrid silence while still maintaining my pride. It may be rather unusual, and some may say creepy, but I began talking to salespeople. Telemarketers would call, and I would be the one who would answer. While I would rarely buy anything, unless it seemed legitimate and something I could use, I found that these people also liked to talk, and so I would have conversations with them. It was enough to satisfy that innate need for human interaction without the worry of having to maintain a friendship. In particular, I enjoyed when door-to-door salespeople would show up. I always thought that job took balls, or insanity, and would invite them inside, or give the landscapers a tour of my yard. It served as a basis for keeping me sane, and I would usually purchase something from these folks, as they were always very kind, and I admired their bravery. Plus, it's much harder to waste someone's time in person. So, inviting this particular salesman in was not all that out of character for me. He wasn't too much shorter than I, and I'm rather tall at 6'8". His frame was much smaller than mine, and he looked to be exhausted. When I opened the door, he began his speech saying, "Hello, sir. My name is Tom, and I'm with Vacuums Unlimited. I see you have a lot of carpet in your home," he said, while peeking his head in and looking at my floors. "Would you like to hear about our unique and innovative in-home solutions?" he asked, his voice flat and nervous all at once. When I told him that I would like to hear about them and asked him to come in, he looked utterly shocked. Not an uncommon reaction, I found. He followed me in, looking around nervously. Something had him on edge, I assumed. Perhaps he was new, and this was his first real opportunity, or perhaps he was nervous about entering a stranger's home. Whatever the reason, I tried to put him at ease. We walked into my TV room, and I gestured at the couch for him to sit down. He took the armchair, and after a brief silence, he stammered. Hi, sorry. I'm a bit new at this." He began sifting through his briefcase. "And, this is rather embarrassing, but I seem to have forgotten my pamphlets. Would you mind if I just talk to you about our project offerings from memory?" "Go for it," I replied. This poor guy. I wanted to be as understanding as possible. "Okay, so, I'll start by asking you, sir, if you are aware of the mission of Vacuums Unlimited," he said. I told him that no, I wasn't, but I would love to know more about what they have to offer. "Alright, sir. So we offer, the best, vacuums in the tri-state area and beyond. Forget Dyson, this is the best and most innovative home cleaning technology available. First up, I have, the Sorry, sir, I seem to be drawing a blank. It's been a long day. Do you have a restroom I can use for a moment? Perhaps splashing some water on my face will help." "Of course, son," I said, getting up and gesturing for him to follow me. I led him down the hall, through the dining room Emily had set so beautifully that, yes, I hadn't touched since her passing, and through the powder room by the stairs. He thanked me and stepped inside, closing the door softly. Not wanting to seem like a perv, I walked back to the TV room, through the dining room where I paused for a moment, taking in the beauty of Emily's favourite room. God, I missed her. I remembered how I once grabbed a plate from one of those elegantly laid out place settings. Oh, how mad Emily was. She had spent all morning meticulously setting it up for guests and hated when anyone messed with it. I thought it was funny though, as we didn't have plans with any guests that night, or anytime soon. When I asked her, Em just said that she wanted it to look nice, just in case. I laughed at her, and she gave me a "don't you dare" look, to which I flashed my crazy "don't dare me" eyes, but I never touched it again. It was only a few weeks later that she passed. I hadn't touched the room, and we hadn't had anyone over. I still feel like crap for having turned down all her requests for dinner parties. I told her that was something we'd do when we were older. Little did I know. Hindsight is 2020. I walked back through to the TV room to wait. He sure was taking a while, but I had seen how nervous he was, so I decided not to mention it when he came back. Another 5 minutes passed, and he still wasn't back. I decided to go check on him in case he needed something. I walked towards the dining room. I was about to turn the corner when I heard footsteps. Faint, but they were there. He must be really light on his feet. The steps weren't getting any closer, but rather seemed to be dancing around. Curious, I stepped through the doorway and saw the last thing I expected. Tom was creeping around my dining room, back to me and briefcase in hand, shoving the fine plates and shimmering silver into said briefcase as quickly and quietly as he could. How could he? No, how dare he? If I couldn't touch those plates, what made him think he could? Those belonged to Emily, and he had no right to touch them. Without thinking, I charged at him, grabbed the back of his hair and shoved him into the wall, head first and as hard as I could. He screamed, I'm assuming in both pain and surprise. I ripped the briefcase from his hands and pulled him from the wall, hurling his large frame into the door. I began pounding my fists into his face, his head, anything I could make contact with. I screamed at him. "What the hell are you doing, you ass?" He could barely mutter. "I'm sorry, I'll put it back. Put it back. Just let me go, please." before I threw more punches. There was no way in hell I was letting him off easy. He didn't just mess with me. He had tried to take Emily's prized possessions. He had nearly severed the one tie I had between myself and my angel, and he had to pay for that. Eventually, I think Tom fell unconscious. My blind rage had left his face nearly unrecognizable, my fists raw and bloody. I looked at his limp body and made the decision to move him. I couldn't have this horrid man in M's space. He had to go. I grabbed his arms and began dragging him further into the house. I opened the basement door and began descending into the darkness with Thief Tom in tow. I pulled him across the concrete floor to the storm shelter. That's what Em had called it. She had been terrified of tornadoes and had me turn a room down there into a space to wait out the severe weather that never came. Because of this, I had sealed all the windows in the room and installed a heavy metal door. Sure, it was overkill, but I would do anything for my wife. It had been Emily's safe space, and now it would be Tom's eternal hell. I shoved him onto the dusty couch, walked out and shut the door. When he awoke, he would find enough food and water for a few days, or perhaps a week, just as Emily had wanted. He would also find the door locked and no other way out. He would find himself sealed in his tomb. After ensuring the door would not open, I went back upstairs, locking the basement door behind me for safe measure. Sure, I felt bad later that night when I heard Tom's faint sobs, but I knew he had deserved it. Not in death would I let anyone take advantage of my Emily. 2 days later, another salesman came to my door, but for the first time, I turned him away. Now, I don't let any salesman in, not because I don't like them or don't trust them, but for fear they'll find what remains of the last one to enter my house.